You ever notice how the loudest person in the room rarely has the most power? The one who slams their hand on the table, raises their voice, and tries to pull you into their storm. What are they really showing you? They're showing you they've lost control. And if they can get you to match that same energy, guess what? You've lost it too. Control is not proven in how loud you can shout. Control is proven in how still you can stand when everything around you is shaking, because anybody can get emotional, anybody can snap back. But the person who can stand in the fire and not let the flames dictate their words, that's the person people follow. That's the person people respect. See, emotions are signals, not commands. Just because you feel it doesn't mean you have to speak it. Just because it rises in you doesn't mean it has to come out of you. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care too much about your purpose to be distracted by their storm. Let me tell you something. Silence is not weakness. Silence is strategy. When you pause, when you breathe, when you don't let their chaos push you into a reaction, you flip the script. Suddenly, you're not the one being pulled. You're the one holding steady. And in that steadiness, there's authority. Because here's the truth. The one who keeps their peace keeps their power. You can't throw me off if I've decided beforehand who I am. You can't bait me into an argument if I know my worth isn't proven by winning your approval. The moment you refuse to be triggered, you become untouchable. Control is not about controlling them, it's about controlling you. You don't rise above the storm by shouting louder, you rise by being still. You don't have to match their fire, you just have to refuse to fuel it. Control is not about silencing emotions, but mastering your response to them. Too many people think control means shutting down, pretending they don't feel, or locking their emotions away behind a cold wall. That's not control, that's denial. True control is when the storm inside you rises, and instead of letting it spill out onto everyone around you, you anchor yourself. You feel it, you acknowledge it, but you don't let it run your mouth or your hands. Think about it. If someone cuts you off mid-sentence, anger will spark instantly. That's normal. The surge of heat in your chest, the tightening of your jaw, that's your body's signal. But that doesn't mean you're commanded to explode. The emotion shows up uninvited, but the choice of what you do next belongs to you. That's where strength lives. In that gap between the feeling and the action, that's your battlefield. You see, emotions are like fire. Fire can cook your food, warm your house, give you light, but if it's not contained, it can burn down everything you've built. In the same way, anger, sadness, frustration, they aren't enemies, they're energy. And when that energy is mastered, it can fuel wisdom, fuel clarity, fuel strength. The dangerous lie is that control is about suppression, but suppression always backfires. You shove it down today and it explodes tomorrow. Mastery is different. Mastery is looking that emotion in the eye and saying, I see you, I feel you, but you don't get to lead me. That's real control. That's what separates the person who reacts from the person who responds. Because anyone can silence emotion for a moment, but the one who can stand in it, feel it, and still choose purpose over impulse, that's the one who has mastered themselves. Emotions are signals, not commands. You choose whether to act on them. Every emotion that rises in you is like a notification popping up on your phone. It tells you something is happening, something matters, something needs your attention. But just because that notification buzzes doesn't mean you have to answer it immediately. You wouldn't drop everything in your life every time your phone lights up. The same wisdom applies to your emotions. Anger signals that a boundary feels crossed. Fear signals that something looks uncertain. Sadness signals that you've lost something valuable. Joy signals that you're aligned with what matters. Each one has a message, but none of them are meant to be your master. The danger comes when we confuse the signal with a command. Anger says, pay attention, but if you take it as yell now, attack now, you've let the signal drive the car. And when emotions drive, they never ask where you want to go. They just take control of the wheel and leave you cleaning up the wreckage. Here's the shift. You are the interpreter, not the puppet. When the signal rises, your role is to step back, decode it, and decide whether it deserves action or whether it just needs acknowledgement and release. That pause, that moment of choosing, is where power lives. Without it, you're at the mercy of every passing wave. With it, you become the one who decides where the ship goes, no matter how rough the waters. Silence can carry more authority than words spoken in anger. When emotions run high, the instinct is to fill the air with words, to defend yourself, to prove your point, to strike back before the other person's words bruise too deeply. But here's the truth. Words spoken from anger rarely land the way you want them to. They don't solve. They don't heal. They only inflame. And when the fire is already raging, the last thing it needs is more fuel. Silence, on the other hand, has a way of shifting the room. It unsettles those who expect you to react. It forces people to sit with their own words. When you don't take the bait, when you don't let anger drag you into its rhythm, suddenly the power dynamic changes. You're not playing their game anymore. You've lifted the conversation to a higher ground where noise doesn't win. Authority is not proven in how much you can say, but in how wisely you can withhold. Think about the leaders, the teachers, the mentors you respect the most. Were they the loudest in the room, or were they the ones who knew how to pause, to breathe, to let their presence speak louder than their mouth? That kind of silence is not empty, it's full of restraint, full of confidence, full of an unshakable message. I am not controlled by your chaos. Silence gives space for reflection, yours and theirs. It allows emotion to lose its grip. It lets wisdom rise to the surface, so that when you finally do speak, your words carry weight instead of waste. Anybody can shout in anger, but it takes discipline, it takes mastery to stay silent until your voice becomes a choice, not a reaction. That's where true authority lives. Detachment is not indifference, it's strength rooted in clarity. People often confuse the two. They think if you don't react, if you don't fight back, if you don't meet fire with fire, then you must not care. But detachment doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've started caring differently, caring from a place of wisdom instead of impulse. When you're detached, you're not numb, you're anchored. You still feel the sting of the words, you still recognize the tension in the air, but you refuse to let those feelings dictate who you are or how you show up. That's the difference. Indifference disconnects you from people. Detachment connects you to purpose. It allows you to see the storm without becoming part of it. Think about a lighthouse in the middle of crashing waves. The waves are violent, loud, relentless. But the lighthouse doesn't try to silence the ocean. It doesn't try to outshout the storm. It simply stands, steady, unmoved, shining its light where it's needed. That's detachment. You don't deny the storm exists, but you don't hand it the keys to your soul. The real danger of reacting emotionally is that it entangles you. Suddenly, their chaos becomes your chaos, their anger becomes your anger, and before long you've lost sight of the original purpose of the conversation. Detachment breaks that chain. It gives you the clarity to ask, what matters here? Is this about proving myself, or is it about protecting my peace? True detachment says, I can acknowledge your pain without absorbing it. I can hear your words without being driven by them. I can stand present without being pulled under. That's not coldness, that's strength. And when people witness that kind of steadiness, they see it for what it really is. Power under control. You don't rise above the storm by shouting louder, you rise by being still. When voices raise, tempers flare, and emotions lash, the easy instinct is to match energy with energy. Someone yells, you yell louder. Someone pushes, you push harder. But storms don't calm storms. Noise doesn't heal noise. All it does is keep you spinning in the chaos, convinced that volume equals victory. Stillness, though, that's different. Stillness is what makes you untouchable, because while everyone else is being tossed back and forth by the waves of their emotions, you're anchored. You're not proving anything. You're not scrambling to be heard. You're steady, and steadiness speaks louder than shouting ever could. Imagine two people in a heated argument, both talking over each other. The room is hot with tension. Then one of them stops. They lean back, fold their hands, and simply listen. Suddenly, the energy shifts. The silence of that person isn't weakness, it's strength. It's a silent reminder that self-control always outweighs noise. That presence speaks without words. I don't need to fight to prove I'm standing. Stillness is not passive, it's powerful. It's not about doing nothing, it's about choosing not to be dragged into everything. It's about conserving your energy for what actually matters instead of pouring it into a battle that can't be won by volume. Here's the truth. Storms burn themselves out, but steady ground remains. When you choose stillness, you become that ground. You become the one people look to when the shouting fades. And in that stillness, you find the authority that no argument can give and no storm can take away. Because power isn't shown in how loud you can get, it's shown in how deeply you can remain unshaken. When you refuse to be baited, you become the one leading the conversation. People who lash out, provoke, or push your buttons are usually fishing for control. They want to drag you into their storm so they can dictate the direction of the dialogue. And the moment you bite, the moment you react without pause, they've got you. You're no longer steering, you're being steered. But something powerful happens when you don't take the bait. When the jab comes, when the sarcasm cuts, when the pressure rises, and you don't flinch, don't snap back, don't match their tone, you shift the power in the room. You're no longer the one being pulled into their rhythm. Instead, you set the rhythm. You decide the pace. And leadership, real leadership, is always about rhythm. Think about a tug of war. If you pull back hard, the other side digs in and pulls harder. But if you drop the rope, they stumble because the tension they were counting on is gone. That's what refusing the bait does. It removes the power of provocation. It forces the other person to confront themselves instead of feeding on your reaction. And here's the truth. People respect the one who doesn't get hooked. They may not admit it in the moment, but deep down, they recognize it. It signals composure. It signals discipline. It signals that you're not here to play games. You're here for substance. The one who refuses to be baited doesn't lose ground. They claim it. They don't avoid the conversation. They elevate it. Because when you choose not to react, you choose to lead. And leadership in a heated moment isn't about who talks the loudest. It's about who can stay calm enough to guide the whole thing forward. The one who guards their peace guards their power. Peace is not something you stumble into, it's something you protect. And in conversations that turn heated, peace is the first thing under attack. People will throw words like stones, hoping to break your calm. They'll press, they'll provoke, they'll test, but if you give away your peace, you've handed over your strength. Peace is more than quietness, it's stability, it's clarity, it's the ability to think clearly when others are drowning in their emotions. Without it, you get dragged into arguments that don't matter, into proving points that don't change anything. With it, you stand steady, and steadiness is power. Because no matter how much noise is in the room, everyone notices the person who is unshaken. Guarding your peace means setting boundaries in the moment. It means choosing which words deserve a response and which don't. It means refusing to let someone else's chaos determine your character. That doesn't make you passive. It makes you precise. And precision is far stronger than reaction. Imagine your peace like a fortress. Every time you let anger pull you out, a wall comes down. Every time you chase an argument that doesn't matter, another gate swings open. But when you guard it, when you decide, this moment will not rob me of myself, you keep the fortress intact. And from inside that fortress, you can lead, you can think, you can respond with authority instead of desperation. The truth is, your peace is the foundation of your power. Lose it, and you're left scattered. Keep it, and nothing outside of you can control you. Guard it like treasure, because once you realize peace is your greatest weapon, you'll never trade it for someone else's storm again. Your response reveals more about your character than their outburst does about theirs. Anyone can lose control, raise their voice, or let frustration spill over. It doesn't take strength to do that. What takes strength is standing in the middle of that storm and choosing your response carefully. Because when emotions collide, people aren't just hearing what's said, they're watching how you handle it. And that handling speaks volumes about who you are. Think about it. When someone lashes out, most people already expect chaos. They expect sharp words, defensiveness, escalation. But when you break that pattern, when you choose composure instead of combat, you create contrast. The focus shifts. Their outburst becomes a mirror of their struggle, but your calm becomes a mirror of your character. People may not remember every word of the argument, but they'll remember how you carried yourself inside it. Your response has the power to either escalate or de-escalate, to either inflame or inspire. And once you recognize that, you start to see every emotional moment as an opportunity, not to prove you're right, but to prove you're rooted. Every time you refuse to match chaos with chaos, you silently declare, "I'm not controlled by the atmosphere, I set the atmosphere." Here's the truth. People trust the one who doesn't lose themselves when things get heated. Because if you can stay steady in conflict, you can stay steady anywhere. That steadiness becomes your reputation. It tells the world, I can be trusted with pressure, I can be trusted with people, I can be trusted with leadership. And that's why your response matters more than their outburst ever could, because it's your response that tells the real story of who you are. Clarity comes when you step back from emotion and stand in purpose. When a conversation gets heated, emotions blur your vision. You stop hearing what's really being said and start hearing only the echo of your own frustration. It's like trying to see your reflection in rushing water. Everything's distorted, unclear, unstable. But when you step back, when you let the waters settle, suddenly the reflection sharpens. You begin to see what's really going on. Purpose is the anchor that clears the fog. If you know why you're in the conversation, what outcome you're aiming for, and what matters most, then emotion loses its grip. Anger might rise, but it won't run the show. Impulse might knock, but it won't decide the door you open. Purpose asks you a simple question: what are you here for? And when you answer that, clarity follows. Without that step back, you end up fighting battles that don't matter, trying to win arguments that don't build anything. Emotion pulls you into proving yourself instead of protecting your peace. But when you return to purpose, you rise above the distraction. You see that some things aren't worth your words. You see that silence, redirection, or even walking away can sometimes achieve more than endless debate. Clarity doesn't come in the heat of reaction. It comes in the pause, the breath, the choice to center yourself before you speak. That's when you separate what's urgent from what's important, what's loud from what's lasting. And once you stand in that clarity, you speak differently, you listen differently, you carry yourself differently. The conversation no longer controls you, you control the conversation. Because the one who stands in purpose always sees straighter than the one drowning in emotion. Restraint in the moment is not weakness, it's wisdom. The world often celebrates quick comebacks, sharp words, and instant reactions as if the fastest response is the strongest one. But true strength doesn't live in speed, it lives in self-control. Restraint is the ability to feel the full weight of emotion rise in you, and instead of letting it spill out, you pause, you measure, you choose. That pause is not emptiness, it is discipline, and discipline is power. When you practice restraint, you're not avoiding the truth, you're preserving the impact of it. Words spoken in heat rarely land where you want them to. They scatter, they wound, they create damage that often takes longer to repair than the conflict itself. Restraint, however, gives space for clarity to step in. It allows your response to be intentional instead of impulsive. And when words are intentional, they carry authority. Imagine holding a sword. If you swing it wildly, you may hit something, but you'll likely cause collateral damage. Restraint is knowing when to sheath it, when to aim it, and when to use it. It's precision. It's wisdom saying, not every thought deserves to be spoken, and not every feeling deserves to be acted on. That's not weakness. That's mastery. The truth is, people remember how you controlled yourself far longer than how you defended yourself. The one who can hold their tongue, hold their tone, and hold their posture in the heat of conflict is the one everyone sees as steady, trustworthy, and strong. Restraint doesn't make you smaller, it makes you greater, because it proves that your emotions don't own you, you own them. And in that ownership, there is undeniable wisdom, undeniable strength, undeniable power. The person who can pause before reacting is the person who truly leads. In the heat of a moment, when emotions are high and words are flying, most people act on instinct. Hey, speak before they think. They move before they measure, and while that feels powerful in the moment, it often leaves regret in the aftermath. But the one who pauses, the one who creates a breath of space between stimulus and response, demonstrates something rare: mastery over self. That pause is not hesitation, it's leadership. It's saying, I will not be owned by the moment, I will own the moment. In that breath, you give yourself time to see clearly, to remember your purpose, to choose words that build instead of break. And when others are caught in reaction, you become the one guiding the atmosphere, simply because you didn't let the atmosphere guide you. Think of it like music. The pause between notes is just as important as the notes themselves. Without the pause, everything becomes noise. But with it, the melody takes shape. In conversations, your pause sets the rhythm. It slows down the chaos. It changes the tone. It lets everyone know you are not rushing, you are not rattled, you are deliberate. People follow the one who can stay steady when others lose control. They trust the person who doesn't lash out, who doesn't get dragged into impulse. That trust is the foundation of leadership, because leadership isn't proven when things are easy, it's proven when tension rises. And in those moments, the one who pauses doesn't just control themselves. They set the example, they set the pace, they set the standard. And that is why the pause is not weakness. It is the clearest sign of true leadership. Control is not about dominating others, but about mastering yourself. Too often we mistake control for power over people, getting the last word, winning the argument, making someone else bend to our will. But that isn't real control. That's insecurity dressed up as strength. True control is inward. It's the ability to stand in a heated moment, feel the pull of your emotions, and still choose your words, your actions, and your posture with intention. Domination looks powerful for a moment, but it crumbles because it relies on force. Self-mastery, though, that lasts. It doesn't depend on anyone else's reaction. It doesn't waver when others resist. It's a steady flame that doesn't need to prove itself by burning others. And when people encounter that steadiness, they recognize it as real authority. Think of a rider on a wild horse. If the rider yanks and jerks, trying to overpower the animal, the fight never ends. But if the rider masters themselves, their patience, their timing, their calm, the horse eventually follows their lead. Control of self influences more than force ever can. In conversations, the same is true. When you focus on dominating, you escalate. When you focus on mastering yourself, you elevate. You shift the conversation from reaction to resolution, from chaos to clarity. And the incredible thing is this: when you no longer need to dominate others, you often end up influencing them more deeply. Mastery is quiet strength. It says, I don't need to win this moment at your expense. I need to stay aligned with who I am. That's where the real power lies. Because the world doesn't need more people trying to dominate each other. It needs more people who have mastered themselves enough to lead with calm, confidence, and conviction. At the end of the day, control is not about silencing your emotions or silencing the people around you. It's about deciding every single time that nothing outside of you gets to dictate what lives inside of you. The storm may rage, the words may sting, the pressure may rise, but if you can master yourself, you've already won. Because the loudest voice is not always the strongest, the sharpest comeback is not always the wisest. True control is quiet, it's steady, it's the kind of power that doesn't need to announce itself because it proves itself in presence. So guard your peace, protect your clarity, refuse the bait, pause before you speak, and remember, the one who leads the atmosphere is never the one who shouts the most, but the one who stands the tallest in stillness. That's what real strength looks like, not control over others, but authority over yourself. And when you walk in that kind of control, you don't just change the conversation, you change the room. And when you change the room, you change the outcome. And when you change the outcome, you change lives. That's the power of staying in control.